Hi, this is Bill from MessickStove on YouTube and MessickStove.com. Today we're going to go over your stove gaskets for the doors of your wood stove. And this particular stove is the DS machine stove. It's the EnergyMax 160. It's a wood and coal burning unit. I've been burning wood into it last year. And basically every year I recommend to change out the stove gaskets. You will hear people say that you can go 2 years, 3 years. Some people say they never change their gasket. So if you're burning wood tendencies between the heat and the exhaust and everything tends to wear the gaskets out. And in most cases you want to replace those once a year or once a season, which boils down to at the end of the season, swap it out, put a new one in there, and be ready for the following season coming up. So this is where we're at. I want to walk you through some steps and what you should be doing, what to look for, and some of the procedures of doing that. So anyway, the biggest thing is I keep telling people is the purpose of changing the gaskets is very important. You get a good tight seal. You have a better control burns in your stove. Also, you'll be able to burn a lot less wood, because if you have the gaskets leaking, then you're going to get more air to the fire, which means you're not really be able to control the fire as much, and also you're going to burn a little more wood. So the other thing is that we want to concentrate on is gases. Any exhaust, we want to try to keep the exhaust in the stove and in the stove pipe and into the chimney, not having any gases leak into your home. That's why it's recommended also to install not just a smoke detector, but also a CO alarm, carbon monoxide alarm detector as well in your home, especially when burning wood stoves. In most cases, by law, it is required, even next to a furnace, a regular oil-fired, a gas-fired furnace, as well as an oil-fired, a gas-fired hot water heater. So it's the same thing recommended for wood stoves as well as coal stoves. Just keep that in mind. It's for your safety. I know some regulations is silly, and some regulations are just, as far as I'm concerned, don't need to exist. And then there's regulations that basically, for the most part, is for your safety, and that's where the smoke alarm and the CO alarm comes in, which I do feel very strongly about making sure you have those in your homes. Most homes have smoke detectors, but the CO's alarms, they should be installed somewhere near the wood stove as well. So anyway, the gasket process here, I want to walk you through it. These are the old gaskets. This is the glass gasket, ash door gasket, stove door gasket. Okay. If you can see, you notice that they're all different sizes for different types of doors. You notice that they're a little worn. Now, for the most part, okay, the gaskets are still strong. They still feel like good tight rope. Okay. This one you're hearing it crack a little bit, but it's not the rope it's cracking or the gasket. It's actually the materials on the back. The same thing with this. But what's happening? The door gaskets really starting to dry out and have some issues. I recommend to replace them. I mean, it's just, they're not that expensive. It's another maintenance thing that should be done and taken care of. Like I said, you want to keep your house safe, yourself safe, your family safe, okay, and the stove safe. So let's just really see if we can take the time and actually purchase new gaskets. And if you can't do this yourself, hire a professional. We do offer the service here at MessickStove, and I do go to people's homes and replace these. This particular stove is the DS EnergyMax 160. If you notice also, the door looks pretty clean, pretty neat. I already started the gaskets in this one. I actually cleaned this door up, so I didn't do any video on cleaning it. It's just be a lot of aggravation, and I wanted to get some work done, so I didn't do that. But you really have to scrape out the old gaskets, sealant in the bottom, the cement, okay? And you also have to get down to like a bare metal sheet. This is cast iron. This gasket, stove gasket, fiberglass stove gasket cement is good for cast iron and steel. And also have my little screws here and the plates for the glass gasket. Okay. Now this gasket, okay, I've actually made the corners a little thicker. The corners seem to not have a whole lot of protection, and they seem to always be a little thin when I go to take them out. So it's best to actually get a little extra in the corners, and that'll be pressed in within clamps anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this glass gasket a little bit here. I left a little overhang. I'm going to finish this up, put this in here, and now I'm just going to overlap that particular joint. So that's going to give me a little extra that I need in that particular application. Take the knife, cut it off clean. Okay, so I got a little extra there, a little extra here. Now, a little extra piece left. Make sure this is nice and clean in here. This is the bottom of my door. Okay, so I always like the bottom ends on the door. Now the other thing is that I went over the glass in the front is smooth. Okay, it's very clean. This is the outside part of the glass. This is the side that might have some a surface to it or a little edge to it, and basically like a little dirtiness. That's the inside, so it really probably don't make a difference, but I want to try to keep it the same. Putting this in here, that little gasket goes down in there. Okay, take my plates. I'll set my plates here. Got my little wrench set up. Now what I also done is that these screws in time will expand and contract and be a little harder to, they might not fit as nice. So what I've done also is I've actually spray painted the screws. I did spray paint the door. I spray painted the screws and the threads as well. That'll give it a little more thickness to go in there. And I don't use any gasket sealers or anything on them. I'm just putting them in here. Remember, this thing gets heated up. The heat itself will help hold it in place. Right now I'm just going around and just setting these. And once this is set, we get them started, I'll go back and snug them up. Now you don't get too crazy with them. You don't have to get a wrench on it, get nuts, because it is a cast iron door. Just want to make sure my glass is where I want it to be. I'm just going to go through, snug them up. Just going to work my way around. I'm just going to do a few turns each time. Gives it a chance to press in a little bit. Bit of adjustment. Like I said, we're just going to keep going back around. Just snug them up. So you don't want to put a lot of pressure on them because it is cast iron. They were drilled and tapped to the cast iron. So you just want to keep snugging them until you basically press that gasket down and against the inside of that door in between this little support here. Once they're completely snugged up, you'll notice that you won't be able to really tighten them anymore. The gasket will compress. And once it's fully compressed, that's pretty much it. This same procedure can be done with a lot of different models of stoves, not just DS. Okay, now that's done. The gasket with the glass is now in place. So now we have that sealed up, and that little extra gasket in each corner is fine. You got plenty of extra in there. Seals it up. Okay, now back to this door. Like this is already cleaned. I already pre-laid this out a little bit. I don't like to stretch the gasket. Depending on this application here, the gasket needs to be bunched up a little bit. It is a larger opening, and if you stretch it out, you're not going to have enough gasket in there to do the job. In this case, on the ash door itself, there's really no bunching needed on the ash door. It seems to fit in there really nice. And you can see it raised up. Okay, we want it to be raised above the actual cast door there. This one here, we want it raised above the inside liner, so when it interlocks inside the channel, it gets a good seal. So this one's pretty much, just need to adjust it just a tad, just to make sure we're where I want it. Like I said, once you cut the gasket, it's cut, and I want to make sure I got plenty of gasket in there. So I'm going to start all over with this one. They do get a little fuzzies. Try to work with that a little bit. Just basically put this in. Same thing, the corners. Concentrate on your corners. Alright. Now I am going to also talk about one other important part of this. It's always, as far as I'm concerned, and which I believe is the best way to install them. I see people install them with a gap next to the handles, gaps in the middle, gaps in the bottom middles, and I always take this in and tuck it in tight to the bottom right hand corner of the door. That's going to be down here on the hinge side. Okay, and then I'm going to fill the gasket in. In this case here, I'm fluffing it up. I'm making sure the corners are thick. Okay, I got extra in the corners, and that'll give me a good amount of seal. Now, not all doors you have to bunch them up. Like I said, that one there doesn't really need it. And there we go. So it looks like I need to cut some off. That's pretty much it. Because I pulled it out and I re-stretched the rope. I'll just tuck that in. Basically that looks pretty good. I don't like the fuzzy wuzzies up there, so I will try to snug that in when I get ready to do the actual gluing in. Okay, the same thing with this door. I'm going to run through the corner, bottom right hand corner, or the hinge side, excuse me, bottom right hinge side. This gasket's going in pretty nice. Remember, you still try not to stretch them out. It's very important. I don't like stretching them out. In some cases, in certain models, if you get the wrong size gasket, you might have to stretch it out, or in some cases, you might have to get a gasket that needs to be fluffed up and pushed in. So, remember, you're trying to seal the door to the stove, not just put a gasket in there. Remember, that's very important. Okay, now we've got that in there. To me, that looks pretty good. I'm going to mark this, pull it out, cut it, and that's pretty much the fit that we want. And then the gasket sealant comes next. So the doors are already prepped, ready to be sealed. I have a tube here, and I have a caulk gun. Okay, this is the black version, black color. there's gray colors, but this is it will turn like a grayish color when it dries. It's a fiberglass stove gasket cement, okay, and it's adhesive. It's fiberglass gaskets, it's steel and cast iron. Withstands up to 2,000 degrees. We'll cut a little bit off here. Do an angle or however you want to do it. Now you don't need a whole lot of this stuff. I don't recommend to smear it all with your fingers like caulk. It's not a good idea. If that's what you want to do, that's your choice. Let me start with this far door first. And what I like to do is test this out on a piece of cardboard. So let me get a piece of cardboard. Squeeze this out, make sure we got a good flow. Make sure there's a good mixture in it. Okay, it's looking good. Just going to basically start running this in here. I like to keep a steady, constant flow, meaning that there's no break in the gasket and the cement. In other words, touching all the way around. Now in this case here, this might be a tad too much. So I might have some excess coming out of around the door. We're going to squeeze it in here. Try to work in a camera is just a little different than actual physically doing it. So I'm trying to think about the camera and physically trying to do it. So it's there's a little spot there I miss. I got a little extra there. The gun ended up squeezing a little more than I wanted. Remember, this is my top. I'm going to start down in this bottom corner. I'm going to just press it in. But also want to make sure there's enough gasket sticking up. And if everything was done right, and I put it back the way I tested it, it should fit right into the same starting point down here. That's what I'm trying to get at. Just double check it, make sure it's bunched up where I want it. Remember, work your way back to your starting point if you want to add more gasket to that, to thicken it up or widen it up a little bit. Don't pull your corner back out, in other words. Okay, bunch it up. Okay, that should fit right back in there. I do like to have a little better, cleaner fuzzy wuzzies here, so I try to get some of those out. I don't want the fuzzy wuzzies in the gook either, so cement. And there you go. Nice, really nice fit. Okay, now the next step is going to be able to stick this door on and press it. Matter of fact, we'll have to show you that in the next video here because I want to do that right shortly. And we'll put this one on and then we'll set both doors. Hopefully you get a chance to see that. Alrighty, let me pull this one out. Looks like it's clean in there, so we're going to start moving the gasket cement. Remember, you want enough gasket cement to seal it, but not too much that you're squeezing it all over the place after you put the gasket in there. This gasket is a little larger, and it is in a deeper channel. So I do have an option of Put a little extra in here than I did the ash door. A lot of times there's not a whole lot required, but like I said, this is, you get used to doing your own project, your own door, and your own setup, and then you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about here. Like I said, I try to do this so there's no gaps in between, so the sealant will actually squeeze into every little part. Okay, looks like we got it in. Take the gasket again. Now notice it's a little roughed up. I'll try to trim it. Try to. Doesn't want to trim too good. Get all that excess out and push this back in this corner nice and tight. Bunch it in here. Okay, and fit this in over the corners, or it'll snug the corners up a little more. Now I'm kind of pushing this in. I'm also not quite sure how far this is going to come into it, so I want to trim these little fuzzies again. I made more of a mess than I did when I started here. This one's actually flaring out on me. So what I'm going to do is just hit it again with the knife. Try to keep that together. Try to get it looking the best I can. Just tuck that in. Bunch it in the corner. Spread it out so it looks good. Okay, now we're going to take this and stick it on the door, stick it back in place. Goes up right like this. Just one pin. Two pins. You're going to take the door. Okay, you see a little bit of a spring because we got the gaskets on there. New gasket. And we're going to push it in tight. We're going to press down and let it sit for a little bit. Same thing with the bottom. Got it on. I'll take the door, we're going to close it, see a little bit of a spring. We're going to push it in. Lock it. That'll help compress it. It'll also compress the doors. Also the handles, I'm going to put the springs back on. I take them off because I was actually painted the door.